welcome to This Week at the Movies with the How Could You podcast.
We're your hosts, Lauren and Ryan, and this week we are covering The Crow, the remake of the 1994 film of the same name, directed by Rupert Sanders and starring Bill Skarsgard and FKA Twigs. Now, Ryan, you are a boy who grew up in the 90s and never quite left, so I'm going to defer this to you first.
Oh
no, you heard it here first.
Yeah, this is a rough one. I don't remember a film that has had such a negative build-up, going into it. Sure. There was obviously such a, should this movie have been made? And then on top of it, the fact that they were going to do an Eric Draven story. And then once all the, photos started coming out of what, Eric Draven was going to look like, there was a lot of backlash. And I'm going to be honest with you, all of it exceeded expectations of how bad this could be. Just bad choices after another. Narratively, I found it a very odd choice on how they were telling the story. Sure. Some choices on what to do with the love story. The look. Eric Draven alone completely... a lot of the acting was really, really rough, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But really, again... music choices that just seemed like the soundtrack's so important to the original film.
Yes.
And this had just some needle drops that just didn't really feel right to the movie. Just again, a lot of bad choices, probably the most which was just by the fact that they decided to remake it and the choice of that.
I think you're so solid about that because I think that's always the conversation when something's getting remade. It's like, well, should it have been done? And I think when you catch lightning in a bottle for a particular cultural moment and you have a little soundtrack that feels to match it, and obviously there's a larger story with the original Crow. I'm coming to this late. I only saw it for the first time this year. Check out that episode on our podcast feed. But I immediately felt very attached to it. And this felt like it was on the wrong foot from the very start of the film. Narratively pretty confounding, both a weird mixture of over-explaining and under-explaining, and I thought that I never felt the heart of it. Like, I never felt the sense that Eric Draven is kind and you want to root for him. He felt kind of bloodthirsty, ruthless, and bland at that. I feel like this was a mistake across the board.
Yeah, there's a sequence in the film, and again, these are spoiler-free, but, there's a sequence in the film that I can't get past, that I just went... I really don't know if I'm supposed to be rooting for Eric or not, and this story. There's a lot of those kind of smaller moments that build up, but there's one huge moment that I'm like, I don't know. What did you think of the villain?
So Dana Houston's really interesting because I think, he has something kind of, he has a way of portraying villainy in a way that's kind of, charming and interesting, but I never felt like they developed him. It's weird. It was he was both in it more... than, certainly, within the original text, but, not enough to really care. I don't know. I just found it kind of messy, and they make a decision that we won't spoil here that really seemed to undercut his villainy in a way. Not that he's not super villainous, but undercut his power.
Yeah, I agree. I like Danny Houston a lot, but he just seems to never get the right films.
I agree with that.
And it's that he's this great actor, but just... Yeah. Never see, and this is another one of those. This just goes on the pantheon of bad remakes, right? It's just not good, and feels like such a cash grab. Something that I will say, and this is probably when you see a film and there's so many people in it you've never heard of or seen, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But when it's a big budget film like this, big marketed film like this, it's a red flag. And no offense to FK Twigs, I didn't like her portrayal in this. No,
and I respect a film, again, that gives, try to give Shelley more of a backstory, but I never feel like the backstory they gave or the screen time they gave Shelley, served the character in a positive way, and I don't think FKA Twigs... I felt like tonally, it felt like in every scene she was being directed a little differently. And what we know of Rupert Sanders, so he directed Snow White and the Huntsman, Ghost in the Shell, which comes with some issues within itself. But at the same time, I don't know, I just think there was something that wasn't captured correctly here about how to portray a really tragic love story in an interesting way.
And it just wasn't a good vehicle for Bill Skarsgård.
Who is a great actor.
Who
is really nice to look at.
Yeah, I don't know. He came very, again, whether it's directing choices, script choices, and there was one moment that you and I turned at each other and looked, and it was like, this is some of the worst written dialogue I've ever heard.
Not to give anyone interior conversations, but on the way home you said it's giving Anakin in episode 2, and I went, oh no.
Yeah, Eric was just whiny. You know, and it's there's not any of the, and it's ironic to say this, the life that Brandon Lee brought to this character of Eric Draven in 1994. There was none of that spirit. Again, I'm not even trying to be, you know, funny with my words here. It's true. It's like he just embodied that role, and that role was written in a way that it really brought this, you know, larger than life character and actor to the screen, and why it's so beloved. And none of that's there. This film is just dry. And it's like, it tries to over-explain things that it didn't have in the original, and it somehow makes you less care. It's very bizarre.
I completely agree with you. So I think what we're saying is skip the remake, go watch the 1994 Crow if you've never seen it, or rewatch it if you love it, and listen to our episode covering the Crow that we did this year. But until next time, to Roger and Jean.
To Roger and Jean.